Okay, so I'm going to talk about Meteor, which is a JavaScript platform. It's relatively new, it's groundbreaking, and I'm really excited about it. And I'm actually one of the co-organizers of the Meteor Atlanta Meetup. We meet, I think, this Thursday, I think right down the street. I can get more information towards the end, but I wanted to talk about my initial exposure to JavaScript. I'm trying to become a full-stack JavaScript developer. My current background is in PHP and Drupal. And I thought about a year ago, or a little bit over that, I would get involved with Node Express, and I ran into some of the problems with actually building a platform or a full stack framework from scratch. So I started looking over I Googled some JavaScript frameworks on the web, found Ember, played around with Yahoo Mojito, Angular, Knockout, and then I found a fantastic talk by one of the co-founders of Meteor, Matt. And he got to the point in the presentation where he began to say that when you run a web application over HTTP, you run into some very common flaws because he felt like the web grew too fast since the 90s and it grew in many different directions. And he started saying, you know, HTTP is stateless, it's unidirectional, and it's unreliable. So they had an approach for a new vision of the web. And I'm sort of here to try to sell that to you. It's none too technical, and so feel free to ask me questions, and I will definitely find answers for you. Now, Meteor is a Y Combinator project, so that actually rings bells for anyone who actually follows startups. It's pretty important and relevant. An incubator. It's you know, Alexis Ohanian, Reddit, and Des Moskovitz of Facebook are individual investors. They've raised about $1.2 million in additional funding after that Y Combinator cycle. So the reason I'm mentioning all these things are because when I'm looking at a framework, I want to ensure that it's going to be production quality, it's going to be around for a while, and it's going to be well supported. So the more I researched and dug into what this company was about, you know, their three main objectives really are to be able to write real-time web in just a really short matter of time, and hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a demo of what that's like. And I feel actually for Matthew in the first, I didn't get your name. You're Chris. Chris, for Chris's demonstration, it could be really easily adapted into Meteor, and I would love to see some people try that. So you know, you can write applications really fast. They're creating opportunities for developers they're really trying to grow their market space, and they have a fantastic community support. And I'm part of that because they made me a co-captain for Atlanta to try to get the word out, and it's widespread. Every single state has several of these meetups and groups that are trying to really learn Meteor, and everyone's really collaborating together. It is an open source project, but they have, after they launched their 1.0, which is relatively soon, a commercial product they're going to be working on called Galaxy. So if you want to look at more information on their open source, there's the GitHub for it. Okay, so the first exposure to this group was about last year when I think you guys held a hackathon, and I think it was the JS Bistro one, and I got together, and I didn't see anybody else that I met there. We got together, and in about, an hour, we put together a version of JS Bistro, and I wanted to bring this up to you because Meteor is relatively easy to pick up, and that's what I'm trying to sell here. In a matter of time, and I'm just going to show you some of the code. In a matter of time, 3 new developers just picked up exactly how you would actually structure a basic Meteor project and run it in real time. A lot of it has to do with its core component of handlebars for templating. And this is a handlebar template. We took the core HTML and JavaScript and broke it up into a Meteor format that was really easy to understand. And it's sort of like component, these are blocks of HTML that you can actually run logic on. I'm not going to get into that, but feel free to ask questions about it. And then another one was, hello. I was actually working at with a student at KSU, and we tasked him to actually create a Parallax design using Meteor, just to see what a basic approach from going static to this real-time web in a Parallax would look like. And you know, it's nothing special, but the fact that it was a freshman student that was able to sort of put this together in less than maybe, I would say, 25 hours of coding with not a great deal of exposure, to computer science elements. I thought that was impressive. So once again, it speaks to the ease of how Meteor is for both experts and beginners. The project I'm currently working on in trying to expose myself to Meteor is I'm collaborating with a biology professor to try to sort of crowdsource water projects in the world. So it's a pretty tall task, and it's given me an opportunity to learn it, to learn just full stack JavaScript development from the ground up. But more importantly, the Meteor lets me abstract sort of the business logic from a lot of the coding, and it's a responsive web, and these are the people that are working with it. And so that's just a little bit about how easy Meteor is to pick up and get started. And so more importantly, rather than actually get technical, because I'm not sure I'm the greatest person to fully explain all the core elements that make it special, I thought I would just go through some of the gallery. And these are some links, and I'm not going to click on every single one. This one I thought was interesting, simply because I think this person actually ported JS over to Meteor without a lot of prior Meteor experience, and I think in less than a week or a day or something ridiculous like that. And it was pretty cool. Part of the things you're going to get to see about Meteor is a lot of the code that you normally see with JavaScript is sort of encapsulated. It's hidden. It runs within sort of a different context than you're used to. So I thought that was neat. I'll list some of the others, and if you want this presentation, feel free to just ask me for it later. Most of the apps, no, that's not it. Most of the apps that you can develop with Meteor, they provide a space for you to actually prototype on. And it's everything else I click on. Let's just cut through these. So when you actually, installing Meteor is as simple as running a curl script to actually install in your Linux or Mac. It's a little bit more complicated for Windows, but they do offer Windows support. And once you install it, it's a command line to deploy, and it's literally something as easy as Meteor space deploy, and you give it a domain name, and that subdomain actually appears on their hosted service and under here. So these are some projects that have made its way, or these are sort of old projects that have been put on this domain. One of them is called Paytax. It's sort of one of the champions for Meteor recently. I think it was just one guy or several small development team that actually started this e-commerce real-time site about selling things, and he did it in Meteor, and I believe he's willing to talk about the code or whatnot. So what else? I'm going to just keep going through stuff. All right, so let's get to the meat and potatoes of what makes Meteor special. And I'll demo this in a second, but there are about 8 or 9 core features that make Meteor unique and different from other frameworks like Ember. Or it tries to do what the frameworks like Ember or Angular, which is not really a framework, but some of the things that they do, Meteor can do, and I think slightly better. One of the concepts they push is something called reactivity, where we use the data being pulled, but instead it's pushed, and a lot of that has to do with the database abstraction that they're employing. They feature out of the bat, when you actually deploy your Meteor app, it has a mini Mongo instance in your database, and we'll take a look at with that in a second. So that's really cool. I think it's the only platform that I know where you can actually access a mini Mongo or a subset of your database within the client. And of course, there are security models around it, so it is well protected and well thought out. Everything that Meteor does that trying to learn as a full stack JavaScript developer is very well thought out and appreciated within the JavaScript community, really. So reactivity, I'll show you that in a second. For example, I think you see a little bit of that in data binding and knockout in Angular, and you get a little bit of that in Ember, and you can replicate some of those things in Meteor really easily. Latency compensation is another thing that's pretty awesome. This is how it mimics or simulates the real-time effects that we see. That you see a lot of, you're used to doing in Ajax. And if you're not familiar with Ajax, this is something you can almost bypass and skip entirely because they handle it for you, and it's done really through the database abstraction layer. And just to give you an example of how I interpret latency compensation, because you're going to hear the term when you research it, is your database sits on the server. There's a mini Mongo instance in the client. But if, for example, your communication between the client and server drops and you go offline, your client always stores a subset of your database through a publication and subscribe model, so that information is pretty much launched right away. So, and I'll show you that what that means in a second. So let me try to, wish I had diagrams. I'm sorry I didn't put any more pictures in it, but just imagine that your client is running its queries on the client side, or your browser is running the queries from the client's subset of the database until it can reconnect with the server side that then actually synchronizes or syncs the database the data and reactively updates the client. So they all sort of go hand in hand, but those core concepts actually blew me away, and I'm better at actually doing it than explaining it. Another core thing that Toby and I really talked about, because he was the one that sort of encouraged me to sort of try to lure some of you away into my meetup, but it's the concept of components. He's a fan of actually, I think he said, the future of JavaScript to him should be sort of along the lines of using widgets or component-based coding, sort of like what I think Microsoft did back in the day with MSC. So Meteor features a similar concept using smart packages. They tout their platform and not as a platform, not as a framework, because you can pretty much use any JavaScript library that's existing out there inside of Meteor. It already comes compiled with jQuery. Some of the things that Matthew and Chris were talking about are already sort of built in, and you can get a list of some of those features, and we'll see that in a second. So that's kind of really cool. So one developer out there started building an entire web application and a multi-page web application using just smart packages, which is just you inject little programs into your framework and you see it work. Obviously, this is better if you see it, but I just wanted to talk about it first, get it out of the way. So one of the cool things are you don't need to actually do includes or imports or anything anymore. I'll try to show you the directory structure in a minute. And ultimately, what it comes down to is everything is loaded according to their. But they have a directory structure that we'll see in a second that's really cool, because anything that's in the lib folder, for example, will load first. And a lot of the bad parts of JavaScript are just loading issues. Anything in the client folder in your project will run in the client only. Anything in the server will run in the server. Anything outside of those client, lib, and server folders will actually run on both the client and server. And that's part of the latency compensation and the reactivity that we're talking about. So I implore you guys, if you want, after we take a look at a quick demo here, some of these sites, Meteorite is sort of their community package manager. It has tons of smart packages, anything from visualization to, I haven't seen Bluetooth yet or anything robotic, so that'd be really cool. And the community is littered with some fancy developers that have come from a Ruby and Rails, Python, and various other backgrounds, and they're really trying to push what Meteor can do, because it's sort of like PhoneGap in the sense that you use your existing knowledge inside this platform, and that's sort of how I'm building it. Meteor JS is let's take a look at that. That's really cool. Meteor JS. That's not a link. It's a new package manager. And anybody familiar with Node, you have the NPM registry and stuff like that. One of the guys on my list just now that he does MeteorHacks.com. He looks under the hood of Meteor and he does some incredible things. And he found a way to open up where you can have every single NPM package inside of your Meteor project. So once again, they're using that sort of ubiquitous approach. So This is their new package manager that's probably going to be adopted. It's a community-driven project once again, but it tells you in real time, built in Meteor, what sort of modules or packages are trending. What, you know, how many, what's the most used, et cetera, et cetera. This is helpful because it happens in real time, and then you can actually see some of the support the packages that you're using or getting, so you know whether or not it's going to, if it's popular, it's going to be around for a while. So Iron Router, for example, is how you would go about doing multi-page applications in Meteor. It gives you a bunch of statistics, instructions on how to use it. It's very thorough, so if you're interested in learning about Meteor, I would definitely hit up the package manager here to address some of your needs. Okay. I use Nitro. I'm on a Chromebook, so it's a ARM7 architecture, and it's not Intel, which Meteor sort of requires to run. So the Chromebook sort of cheats that process because I use Nitros for it, and that's where we're going to go now. Nitros is an amazing. It's free, and if you wanted a plan, it ranges anywhere from $9 to $50. I created a basic project, and I'm just going to run it in the browser so you can see what is some of the real time and reactive things that are going on. Hello. Okay. I'm sure this is. So there are many built-in packages with Meteor, and let's just take a look at some of them actually before I run that, so you get an idea of how things work. And can y'all see this? Probably not in the back, but you can hear me. So if we go into, I loaded a parties example here. If you do a Meteor list, this is probably not going to be the best way to actually show a list of projects. Let's just do this. These are some of the built-in core modules or smart packages of Meteor, and some of them you're very familiar with. A lot of jQuery, underscore email that actually uses Mailgun. They have a partnership with Mailgun, D3 for visualization. And the thing I'm really trying to point out here are all the sort of their built-in, very secure authentication packages. With this, you can easily just say Meteor add accounts Facebook, and just add your Facebook credentials in a config file, and you have connectivity with your Facebook account. So a lot of this stuff they sort of encapsulate and hide so that beginners can use it, but expert users alike can really just, it's open source. You can go in, you can custom. You can tailor it, you can do whatever you want with it. Obviously, it's not a good idea messing with any core because if they do changes, then out of luck. So let's use this example. This is their built-in authentication system, and this is an example of it. I'm just going to actually create an account on my here for this local application. Oh, I already exist. Must have done this before. Okay, so that's interesting because I'm running it off my Nitros.io account. The database information, it's still Is that again? Oh, it's Meteor. Yeah, just made up a new guy.
It's a new framework.
Yeah, new framework, Meteor. Totally. Okay, well, I'm not logged in yet, so it doesn't have any information there, so let's me sign in. Okay. So I signed it because I already have an account there. So this is me tapping into the user collection in Meteor, and this is the user object for this particular individual, which is me. And a lot of this is familiar to you JavaScript developers. Your prototype object, your user object, and any collections that you sort of define on either the client or the server, you can pretty much tap into using this mini Mongo interface in the client. Now, obviously, there are just very simple permission rules you can give to the actions of database interactions. So that just not anyone can just go in and look at your database. It allows for updating, editing, removing, and all that stuff. And I'll show you that in a second because their example works. Oh, so I've used this before. Okay. So literally, if anyone ever goes to this URL in this room, you'll see this happening in real time. The page doesn't reload, it's reactive. The database is actually, I think it does some sort of polling. I'm not familiar with that concept of the client polling the server. And I guess since it's Meteor, it's a play or a build off a Comet. But I'll just give you an example. So I'm going to add at, oh, I don't even know how to pronounce it, JavaScript Meetup. So, you know, the best thing to do here is actually just open two browsers. And what happens in one, it's the same session. I'm lazy about it. So, as you can tell, that information showed up in multiple sessions, multiple browsers, and if you weren't logged in, since this is a public, you would actually see it as well too. So that's real-time web, folks, and they made it really easy, so you can do some of the fun things that you see on Facebook and Twitter. And so let's get into the code just for a second here, just to show you what the structure and architecture of a Meteor project would look like. So parties. You can see this. So there's your client folder. There's your public folder, and all your assets would go in there, and there's no need to actually put in use a path when you're using assets. For example, this is Soma.ping. To include it in your Meteor file, your CSS can just reference Soma.ping. It doesn't need to know where. Meteor just goes around, finds it, minifies both the CSS and the JavaScript, so that's pretty cool. So all your assets would go in public, all your client-side code would go in, your client stuff will go in there, and all your server code. And then anything that exists outside of it, you can use your own naming convention, but it would you would be running in sort of a model architecture. So let's go with the server, just to give you an example. So in the server, you typically want to publish. You're pushing information to the client, and since it's reactive and it's real time, I guess some polling goes on behind the scenes, and it's literally pushing to all the clients that are connected or that are subscribed to whatever this server whatever your application server is publishing. So for this particular one, they're publishing, the directory, which are the collection of all the users, and they're. I guess I should mention that since Meteor is really all about JavaScript, even though you can use multiple different technologies with it, I think like Python and PHP and stuff, but so you're built in with MongoDB, you have JavaScript on the client and the server side through Node, so everything is just really all JavaScript, and that's why I'm sort of presenting here. So if you are not familiar with MongoDB, this is just how you would actually query for the email and profile fields of users. Anyway, so this is returning a user object to the clients that are subscribing for this information. And just to show you what that would sort of be like, this is your client now. And literally, your client is just saying, hey, listen, I want to subscribe to this collection on the server side. Now, as a Meteor and a JavaScript developer, in general, what you want to do is be responsible. So what's happening is that when you subscribe to a collection on the server side, it's copying the entire database to your browser at this point in time. And just because this is an example, they allow it. Eventually, you're going to want to limit what your publications are what you're subscribing to, so that you don't have performance delays and you make your application scalable. So with that in mind, you can definitely pass parameters, for example, subscribing, and something or the other here. I forget the exact syntax, but you would pass a JavaScript parameter to this subscribe model, and it'll pull just a subset of that from the server side. So that's important to know. All right, so getting back to the server side. So the server's job is to do a lot of the things that you want to protect. And what is that? Junk stuff. Okay. So let's get to the client now, where the meat and potatoes of this platform is all about, because it's the MVVM architecture. They're all about event-driven and strong user interface or front end. So because it uses handlebars, and you're not limited to handlebars, you can use different templating engines that you're familiar with. Because it uses handlebars, we're seeing partials, we're seeing blocks, and there are helpers, which are just helpers are sort of extensions to your templates, or your templates to JavaScript stuff, just for lack of better words. So with Meteor, how do I begin this? So you can abstract out all your HTML into whatever logical structure that you want on inside this folder. You can create client views. And then you can break up parties into, every template can be its own really HTML page. Meteor will find those templates and just kind of render one entire HTML page. So you can run a multi-page Meteor app in just one single HTML and one single CSS file. But just for good programming practices and stuff, it's a good idea to sort of break up your application based on the business logic. So for example, this is rendering a page. This is what a page would look like. It's saying if there's a dialogue, if there's not, yeah. If you need to create a dialogue, then create it. And that would be referenced in what they're, some people are calling, with a model view controller, you used to have your controller delegate between your client and your model. With Meteor's, on the client side with Meteor, you have this JS file that is associated with a template. So for example, let me find it. Our template in here was called page. So the template name page, and you can write JavaScript just to work within that context, that data context of page. So I don't know what's going on here. So if you do, find it. So here's a basic example of so anytime you load or render that HTML that you find here, the business logic is tied to it. I don't know what's going on. Okay, the business logic is tied to it with this JavaScript file that's associated with it. And once again, you can have one entire JavaScript file that runs across the entire application as well. But it's a good idea to break it up. So with that in mind, we talked about client, we talked about server, and let's just talk about the code now that runs on both the client and the server. Here you're declaring a database collection in MongoDB called parties, and this database is actually going to be available on both the client and the server because you declared it outside of the client and server space. Here's where you would actually deny individuals from using the mini Mongo on the client side to insert or update, and you can apply whatever logic you want, update, remove, etc., etc., etc. And this is where the Ajaxing part comes in. If you need your model here, or the code that sits on both your client and the server, if you need your client to actually interface and talk with your server, you would actually just run a meteor.methods and literally create the methods, and then you would do a meteor.call on the client side, and it would actually call that method on the client side. So at the end of the day, this is not really hard to pick up. It's really easy to use, and I encourage anyone that's interested in learning about it to give it a shot. There's a company out there called Differential IO. If anyone has a startup, and I'm just going to plug them a bit because I had a good conversation with them about 3 weeks ago. There are about 10 or 12 individuals that actually build Meteor apps, starting with cash. If they like it, they'll fund it fully and get it launched for you. Nitro.io, I talked to you guys about. If you don't know about it, it's pretty stellar. Just another shameless plug of some things that I'm using, but you need to create, for example, and you just need to run this for fun or just whatever. These are some of the technologies that there are boxes that they're supporting. If you wanted a Python Django box, for example, just run this and you have your entire full admin role box that's running in this sort of a gamified approach that they have here. If you can, if you connect to GitHub, they'll give you 5 extra points, and with 5 extra points or something like that, you can actually create multiple boxes for different development purposes and refactor sort of the how much storage or memory you need. And it's great for prototyping, not necessarily for launching a production app. And I mention this because it's been sort of the best way to learn Meteor for individuals. Another thing I really wanted to point out, and sort of the last thing, is this madeye.io. It's a Meteor project that lets people collaborate in real time. So it's, one of the things Toby was interested in was really that pair programming where you can sit down with somebody and actually code collaboratively. So I'm just going to show you how that would sort of work. And then I think my demonstration is over. So, to create a Meteor app, it's Meteor create blah, blah, blah. To launch Meteor, it's just Meteor. To deploy it to their meteor.com site, so if you wanted to prototype something really quickly, you deploy it with a subdomain. If it's not password protected, it'll overwrite the existing subdomain on there. If you wanted it password protected, you just hit a -p, give it a password, and you have your completely free Meteor app running in their supported space. And obviously it's free for now because they're trying to make sure that everyone gets exposure to it. So to run madeye, it's an npm module. This is really neat. You would just literally type madeye inside your working environment, and you can use this in I think PHP, Python, anything really. It's a node module, so it would run within it. So if you wanted to collaborate with a bunch of developers using Google Hangout, you just copy and paste this URL in there. But if you don't want the Google Hangout, since my Chromebook probably can't handle that right now, it's a hashed. It's a hashed environment where anyone that knows that hash can actually just access your Meteor or whatever development application you have. It's very simple, but I really like it for the fact that you can have multiple people work on code, and because Meteor is reactive, let me show you what that means. Take a look at all tomorrow's parties, for example. Let's find the other guy. So you can see the live reactivity of this. I lost my madeye. Okay, there it is. And come on, all tomorrow parties. I'm going to go ahead and push that chain. Oh, come on. I probably need to reverse that, but let's just do it this way. All right, so I'm going to go into my HTML. I'm going to I'm going to change all tomorrow's parties to all tomorrow's parties, and I'm going to save it in madeye. And madeye is just going to run Meteor on the Nitro side or wherever your local environment, and then oh, that's the title. My bad. It's happening there, so let's change it to where it's here.
And you didn't have to refresh, or did it just automatically?
No, you didn't have to refresh. So the client is communicating with the server and it's just pushing data. Saving this bad boy, as you can see. So it's great for development, and it's great for seeing things. For seeing things in real time, really. So I think that's really neat.
What's actually happening there? Is it fetching the new template, or is it reloading? Is Nitros.io somehow reloading Chrome, or what's happening?
So Nitros is not reloading Chrome. So what's happening there is behind the scenes, Meteor is actually pushing that data to the actual template. You know, they use a protocol. We began with talking about they think HTTP is broken, so they refactored DDP. For those who are familiar with it, I'm not entirely familiar with it. For actually creating this this bridge, or I guess a socket between the client and the server, this two-way communication. One other thing that I thought was really neat was that they use, you know, they thought Node was fantastic, and they built this entire framework in Node. The backbone of this is Node, by the way. If you actually look within this .meteor file here, let me show you right quick. Let's just go here and we'll kill this. Every Meteor application ships with, let's go, .meteor. This .meteor folder, which contains a lot of the, I mean, I guess you can dig through this yourself, a lot of the Node backend stuff. That goes on forever. So, to answer your question, yes, it happens in real time. We call it magic for the beginners. But there's a lot that's already, that you're already probably familiar with, but they sort of repurposed just to make it work. So one of the cool things I wanted to mention was that they began building this in Node, and then they found that it was too difficult for beginning JavaScript people to sort of grasp the asynchronous nature of Node JS programming and the spaghettiness that can be applied to it if you have large-scale applications. So they use fibers to actually help you still write your code in a top-down format, like you're familiar with doing with current JavaScript programs. So, like, you lose nothing about what you currently know about JavaScript, but it goes through fibers and it runs asynchronously in the back end, and you never have to worry about that. So that's really kind of cool. It ships with its own version of Node, and you can check whatever version of Node by looking through the Meteor release file in that Meteor folder that's hidden. I think it's currently, it keeps pace with like 10.21, I think right now, 0.10.21. Let me see, anything else I need to mention? So we talked about client server, we talked about real time, the latency conversation. If you have any questions, now's a good time, sure.
Yeah, browser support, I'm assuming IE, all that stuff's out there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, whatever that you're familiar with currently in terms of what JavaScript can support, Meteor doesn't take away that. It's just sort of, the way I get it is that it takes the good parts of JavaScript and it makes it work. So, in sort of a platform, not necessarily a framework.
Well, what IE, you know.
Yeah, from what I understand, it works in every single browser. What IE, I think it can compensate for a 7 and 8. I would have to do some further research. That's a good question to ask. The community is filled with a lot of people in Stack Overflow and stuff like that. If you guys want to ask them questions, they're super friendly. If you go to meteor.com, you know, a lot of the information is there. For example, Chris was talking about jQuery events, and if you actually just go to their docs and look up on the side, they'll give you a bit of their API with very good examples. And in one of them, there's an event map that shows you all sort of functions and features it can support. And this is a crappy looking page. That's not what it looks like generally, but all the things we talked about here, they go into more details, and I implore you to look at it. I'm not sure.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No.
To answer that last question, I have a couple of fallbacks. So if socket IO isn't available, basically for our PC, it'll actually fall back to long pulling for the browser. So
Just Ajax, right?
yeah, it should work past like IE7 basically. I'm still gonna have caveats. Different libraries might run.
You let me do this Meteor talk by myself? That's crazy. No, I'm kidding. And this page is generally a little better where it actually goes through an API on the left-hand side where you can click on stuff. But you know, one of the things that were really fun was just looking at events, because you know, while Chris was talking about it, it's you know, this. Remember we talked about every template sort of has an associated JavaScript file that represents the logic. So for example, if you wanted to, on the player score, a JavaScript object within your template, if you click on it, for example, you know, this is your jQuery, this is your advanced model right here, you know, in terms of this particular logic suggests that you update your database every time someone clicks on a class that says give points. and you look through some of the examples in the code that's already out there on Git and stuff, just to see how that works. But I thought that was really neat, really easy to understand, really well polished. Any other questions? Go ahead, yeah.
How are we caching data between requests or connections?
Oh yeah, so that's a good point.
You closed down the browser and
Yeah.
turned off your internet and went to it, but it would still work, right?
If you tell it to, yes. So the short and long answer to that is, the short answer is I don't fully know, or that's the long answer, I don't fully know. The short answer is that they don't, they think sessions are broken too, like cookies. So they implemented their own session object that you can make into, you can have persistent state using Amplify, which I guess is a JavaScript package or library out there. And I think I have an example in some of the projects I'm using where I can actually pass states between pages or between browsers using their session object, which is really just a basic JavaScript object with a getter and setter. And they off the bat, are the gates, whatever the correct term is. I believe you can. I saw a caching app cache. So there's app cache as well too, if you want to actually have some kind of persistent state when you shut down. But ultimately, it's going to be in your database is going to exist inside your browser, and that's a good question. If she closes, I don't know if that goes away. But I think that's sort of the, you know, these guys were sort of, I don't know if they built it yet, so we can always test it. You know, these guys are two developers that got started building a new way to do data management, and sort of we're piggybacking off with the things that I'm trying to learn and build here. And I think one of the things they are touting with Meteor is that it's coming soon, but they have the ability to go offline. For example, I think they're doing a project in like West Africa, and you don't have an internet connection. You want to use this as a sort of native app. Which I'd be curious to know how that would work with Matthew's phone gap stuff, and you want it to work natively without an internet connection, and it's sort of, I guess, how Google works is how they're building it. You know, if you can still use Google Docs when it's offline, and then automatically when it resyncs when you go back on. I don't know if it's cached or it's stored in the database, but it's somewhere along those lines.
A similar project to this is Firebase.
Yeah, Firebase, which is this sort of like platform as a service, right? It does all the back end and the storage for you, and it's in the cloud.
Right, and it also allows offline processing.
Yeah, and I think you can use Angular with that as well too. So it's pretty cool. You know, Meteor is very confident about what it can do and how it compares to like Ember and Angular. So if anything you can do with those, they say you can do better. So I would definitely explore it. You had a question?
How's it on the resource usage?
Resource usage. So, you know, this guy is a super hacker. So that's been one of the popular questions lately. How is Meteor, how scalable is Meteor? You know, how can it handle large scale applications? Somewhere in here, there's an answer. And I wish I could find it, but he looks under the, he looks at questions like that and he has answers, and they're really well thought out. So I would definitely implore you, and even email. But I'm not familiar with Oplog. It's a MongoDB thing, I guess, that they've re-implemented as a way to make Meteor very scalable and production quality, I guess. And they also redid their entire HTML templating engine, and they call it Blaze. So if you see references to Blaze, that recently came out in their 0.8 version. So everything is lightning fast. So their intent is to make everything really fast.
I saw when you read Meteor list the packages listed. Like, it just, I mean, it's a little strange to me. Like, so Bootstrap, like, is it anti-pattern then to like implement like Bower as a package manager in tandem with the Meteor packages? How are the Meteor packages different than like, say,
So
like,
these Meteor packages are sort of built into the core. These are, I think, tools that they use to help develop it themselves. You don't have to use it. In fact, it's the easiest thing in the world. If you actually, let's go back here to manage it. You can, so if you wanted to use Bower, for example, or I'm not sure anybody has used Bower to actually handle packages in Meteor, but I'm not a full stack, guy just yet. And so if you have a way of doing it, you can do it, I guess, if it's related to Node. But in terms of the packages here, if you actually look at it's a basic file, and then you can tell it what packages you want it to support. And if the core packages are not things you want to support, because Node has about 80,000 modules out there, you would use Meteor or Meteor JS, and you can even write your own packages. Actually, they have they're touting as a relatively easy way to create your own packages. You would actually create a JSON file. You would tell it which GitHub directory to launch the JavaScript from. And one of the things that they're pushing, and I guess I don't fully understand this, is that every package, to avoid the conflicts in the namespace, are their own global namespace. They wrap it around an anonymous function, I guess. And so they take care of all that stuff for you as you learn it. Learning is slightly tedious, but once you learn it, it just becomes really powerful and beautiful to use. But building your own packages, like if there's a jQuery carousel version 2.3 that you really want, you just go out there, you package it with a JSON file, you add it to the packages folder. And inside your application, you would create a packages folder right here, and you would add that JSON file to that. And what Meteor Write does is actually it pulls from their own repository. Which in the beginning I think it's Atmosphere, so I got to look into that. But if you wanted to include Node modules as well too, you would actually just write your own package and put it in that package folder to load Node. So I'm not sure that answers your question, but it's close. Any other questions? I created the Meetup group because I was enthusiastic about learning about Meteor. So if you're all interested, you look at Meteor Atlanta. We have about 11 or 12 people who consistently show up, and a lot of them are much smarter than I am. And some of them have actually built applications. I think the next one we're having is this Thursday, where people are actually shown and telling what they've built. So some of the challenges that they experienced, you'd be more than welcome to see what they're doing and ask them questions, and they probably have better answers. I'm just a guy who gets everybody together for now. Yeah, their smart packages are pretty cool because it's robust. I'm learning about it. Any other questions? Sort of? If you look at some of the stuff out there, it's pretty darn cool. Here's my party moment. And just to give you an idea of how you can think about Meteor in general, these guys created, this French firm created this, it's called this real-time app called GetClean.io. It's to help you, it's a real-time web app that lets you know when your laundry is ready. It's a laundry service, so how cool is that? Just if you think about all of the real-time applications that we can come up with, Meteor is probably going to be a fantastic tool to help propagate them. Another person came up with, what is it? This one is a real-time email client for something in Twitter, and everything happens in real time. So if you see, the more you see and hear about these modern web applications taking advantage of real-time web, Meteor is sort of a step ahead of the game, I think, because a lot of people are embracing it and they're building it, and you can really learn from it. So there's a lot of cool applications out there. You can just Google it or use some of the links on here. All right, I think that's all I have. Thank you.